What would you say is the most important selling point of a horror movie? Don't think too hard about it. Let's be real here. It's not the cinematography or the score or the director behind it. It is the monster, or slasher, or ghost. All those other things I mentioned are fantastic for recommending flicks to discerning horror fans, but if you want to put butts in seats, you gotta have a wicked monster. So it's tragic when monsters that should by all means be chillin' in the Hall of Fame get passed over time and time again. Let's hear it for the top 5 horror movie monsters nobody talks about, part 4. Coming in at number 5, the meteorite aliens from Attack the Block. This whole movie is underappreciated and deserves more love. A bunch of hoodlums in London fighting off aliens in an apartment block using weapons lifted from the local drug dealer? Come on, tell me that doesn't sound like a blast and a half. John Boyega was in this flick pre-Star Wars and Nick Frost was involved as well. Although, the aliens are the true stars of this one. One night, after our main characters mug a nurse, a meteorite touches down atop a poor unfortunate car. The lads find the corpse of the little alien inside and think it's hilarious. Well, they're not laughing for too long as more of these creatures make their way into town. These ones are a whole lot bigger, stronger, and meaner too. Plus, they're able to track down people covered in their pheromones, making them extremely effective hunters. All of the scenes these creatures show up in are super tense, as their presence is always pretty oppressive. They're super violent and super deadly, meaning that one wrong move could result in death. Plus, just look at them. Enormous gorilla-like beasts with Vanta black fur and enormous mouths full of glowing blue teeth. I cannot wrap my head around the fact that this movie is so underappreciated. Like, give these aliens a whole series where they drop down in different areas across the world and have to deal with all the rambunctious youth. There's a whole lot of potential in that idea, so if somebody wants to pay me for it, just let me know. In the meantime, I'm just gonna go watch the movie again and appreciate the special effects wizardry used in making these creatures come to life. They controlled gigantic puppets in huge suits during the filming of Attack the Block, and then went back to add the extra features like fur that doesn't reflect light, and of course the glowing dental bits. It just makes the beasts feel hyper real and otherworldly at the same time. They carry a lot more weight than a lot of other sci-fi creatures that are strictly digital. These are some seriously fun and freaky movie monsters, although I would never want to run into one in real life. I just don't have enough rough and tumble street urchin pals to back me up if things got scary. Unless. Coming in at number 4, the second baby from It's Alive. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Babies are scary. Tiny little parasites that grow inside people until they get too big and have to be painfully forced out, sometimes requiring major surgery in order to preserve the host's life. Then they're miniature humans who don't know how to act, and it's totally up to you to ensure they become decent people who can navigate this hellhole world we inhabit. And they cry and stink and look like this? You don't need a baby to have evil mutant powers to make folks' blood run cold, but when the baby does have a thirst for blood and otherworldly strength, you better watch out. A lot of creature features from the 70s and 80s with less palatable concepts seem to go underappreciated over time, so we'll bring back this one for your viewing pleasure. There's something about the dogged craftsmanship behind flicks like this that make them such a joy to behold, especially when there's a scene of a baby killing a milkman followed by a bunch of bloody milk running at the back of the milk truck like a wild water rapid. The message behind our young lad is a little skewed, especially by today's standards, but it is definitely interesting enough to keep the story going. See, Frank and Leonore wanted to enjoy a little peace and quiet before having a second little crotch goblin in the picture, so Leonore took contraceptive medication. Birth control, but more scarily worded. Eventually, after they had their fun, the couple decided to nix the meds and try for another kid. And it worked, too. Unfortunately, all those years of evil, nasty medication for women, made Leonore's womb a place where devils like to hang out, and the result is a demon baby. Their first kid, Chris, stays at their friend's place while the mom and dad head to the hospital to pop out his sibling, but by the end, he's running for his life. When Leonore makes that final push, the doctors are horrified to discover that her spawn has sharp fingernails, horrible fangs, and a startling amount of bloodlust. It immediately kills all the medical staff in the room and escapes via skylight. Imagine watching a literal newborn do that. It would be hilarious and tragic, but hilarious. Then begins a deadly game of cat and mouse, with the baby both evading capture and dispatching various innocent bystanders throughout town. And this thing is ugly too. Like, whoever designed this baby was absolutely horrified that one day they'd be presented with an unexpected pregnancy. And for a baby, this thing can take a lot of bullets. Like, nobody has any qualms about firing guns at this baby. Some seriously underrated stuff right here. Coming in at number 3, we've got the vodka monster from Leviathan. If you're gonna rip off a movie monster, you might as well make it a good one, right? Well, that seems to be the guiding principle behind the creation of the 1989 underwater monster movie Leviathan. It caught a lot of flack at the time for shamelessly pulling elements from John Carpenter's cult classic The Thing, but in the end, all that means is more fun creature effects for everyone to enjoy. Artistic integrity is a myth. With all that out of the way, let's talk about all the cool stuff this deep sea demon manages to do. So you might have noticed I called this creature the vodka monster. Unfortunately, it doesn't work by the same principle as the cookie monster, but that is a fun thing to imagine anyways. Nope, it actually originated from some tainted vodka, salvaged from a scuttled Russian vessel, Leviathan. Whatever was going on within the titular shipwreck must have been bad, because when the American crew starts partaking in this salvaged spirit, chaos begins to reign. Crew members begin suffering inexplicable wounds, and a couple of corpses end up fusing together to create a disgusting abomination of flesh and bone. The crew decides to dump these bodies into the ocean, but it's too late. A tentacle escapes being ejected and morphs into a hideous creature. Then we reach the Thing-style antics. It can take over bodies, change into different forms, and sneakily kill folks before anyone notices. Plus, there is a wicked final form you do not want to miss. Coming in at number 2, we've got C.H.U.D from C.H.U.D. Spoiler alert, the acronym for C.H.U.D actually has 2 meanings. You've got the classic cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers, which is just such a great thing for a movie monster to be called, and then there's the second definition, which explains how they came to be. For all you folks out there who haven't managed to witness C.H.U.D in all its glory since 1984, I'll spare you the truth. But for most people, C.H.U.D is just one big joke. It's cheesy, it's cheap, and the monsters don't exactly look super convincing, but it's fun, alright? And the deadly, nasty humanoids dwelling in the sewers are unforgettable to say the least. They live beneath the city, preying on the homeless folks that have taken shelter in the vast interconnected tunnels. As one might expect, city officials and members of various boards don't really care about the homeless folks down there. They just want the creatures dealt with. And if that means killing every living being underground, so be it. So we've got a double whammy of rubber suit wearing sewer men and political commentary on how the less fortunate are treated. What a movie! What a bunch of monsters. And there's a sequel too, Bud the Chud. And coming in at number 1, we've got The Blob from The Blob, 1988. So you might be thinking to yourself, Keegan, The Blob is a horror icon. Even though it wasn't even well received when it came out, everyone knows The Blob. It even got a theme song. And while all of that may be true, The Blob 1988 is a lot less lauded. The original starred a young Steve McQueen, made use of some hilariously effective blob technology, and set the stage for similar monster movies. But the late 80s remake didn't get the same amount of love and adoration upon release. In fact, a lot of folks discounted it as cheap and poorly made. But the monster itself from this iteration is absolutely incredible. Practical effects were peaking in the late 80s, and a lot of movies were beginning to look to digital effects for the next big thing. So when Chuck Russell decided to stick to a more traditional filmmaking method, he might have raised a few eyebrows. But the effects done up by Tony Gardner and his team were unparalleled. It's so very gooey, so extremely slimy, and just plain cool. That scene where it drops from the ceiling and takes out a Letterman, next to none. They just don't make monsters like this anymore. Monsters rejoice. You're gonna get a little more attention in the coming days. The more folks watching horror movies, the better, right? So, what'd you think of the list? Did you already know about these movie monsters? What's a horror movie monster you want to get more attention? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more independent ones from the top 5 newest SCP Monsters 2021 Part 3. Rodney Kelly says SCP-5855, that explains VeggieTales. Broccoli, celery, peachy keen, VeggieTales. Barbarian Librarian says, I'm glad somebody finally made a Sailor Moon SCP. It was just waiting to happen. I agree with your comment, but I just have to say you've got a great name. Megiddo Eubanks says, you had me at meat magic. Is that a better line than hello? Sunny Shine says, I use this series and all the other SCP content to pick which one I want to explore next. Good call. While the lists are a great jumping off point, the real good stuff is in the actual entries. And Filthy Sammy says, wish the SCP Foundation was real, frowny face. Well, we can prove they aren't. And that's the time we have for today. I'm going to be especially mean to the large, quiet fellow who works down in the meat processing plant. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.